So this is Gene, at least after the I need an adapter for a Hoover Max Extract Pressure Pro Model 60. This is set in the future, after Saul Goodman days. He is on the run and he is keeping it on the down low. I always thought he would get away with it, being a street king lawyer and all, but here we are. If probably he asked himself the time machine question, what is going on in his mind, he is probably counting something like, I like Jimmy because he is a survivor, as Harold Hamlin once mentioned. The question is, did he make a wrong turn in his decision to be Saul Goodman? No, maybe. To be honest, he had to take himself through law school while working at HHM, where his brother Chuck was a partner. All the fancy law talk at the firm made him feel sort of left out. And Harold goings on about how they beat the case and all. To make matters more pressing, him, his friend, was a law student, soon to graduate and maybe join the firm. So Jimmy takes off for lunch. While at lunch, this amateur shoplifter comes by putting Jimmy in a very tight spot. I think I know why he snitched on the shoplifter. He probably would never snitch given his own circumstances. It was either him or the shoplifter going behind bars. I mean, the cop was too close to his face, one whisker away from identifying him. He did snitch as fast as he did just to get the cops off his face. After Jimmy collapsed, he's taken to the hospital. He undergoes a number of tests, and it's a false alarm, no heart attack. Mr. Gene tries to leave, but the hospital receptionist is having trouble running his license and social. He looks scared and is almost taking off running. He probably crosses his fingers. The receptionist nurse looks tired. Maybe she was almost finishing her shift. She was making typos, while Jimmy was getting scared thinking he had been made. The credentials finally check out. Now Gene's being looked over by some shady-looking cab driver from his old hometown of Albuquerque. Gene doesn't like this and he wants out of that cab. It's difficult to tell if Gene is being paranoid or if this shady-looking fella may have recognized him. Jimmy probably saw all this in the grand scheme of things and was more than determined to be a lawyer. He did not want to be a loser, so to speak. Imagine having a lawyer girlfriend, a lawyer brother, while one is stuck as a mailroom guy. Not cool. Of course, Jimmy was in his about money. He also wanted to prove to Chuck that he can also be a good lawyer. Howard asked him once, is Saul Goodman on? What is he all about? This is the answer he gave. Saul Goodman is the last line of defense for the little guy. He is a life raft when you are being swept down the river. He is a sharp stick if you are being stepped on. Saul is the guy with the slingshot if you got Goliath behind you. He's a righter of wrongs. He's a friend to the friendless. During his one-year disbarment at the scholarship awards hearing at HHM boardroom, he voted or wanted a Christy Esposito to be awarded the scholarship from the firm. So who's Christy? Christy is basically Jimmy. Character-wise, Jimmy sees himself in her. She was labeled the shoplifter, hence the long lecture he gave to her after she did not succeed in getting the talk. In the lecture he mentioned how the privileged and the highly regarded type in society will always see others of a different class than theirs from their previous mistakes, and based on these mistakes, they go ahead and judge him fairly. Saul mentions how you should never play by the rules if one is considered a low life because they will never make it and have what they want. He talks about always cutting corners to get what you want. That speech settles it. Though Saul knew what he wanted and how to get it. Tension consumes Jimmy from the very first moments. Jimmy, aka Gene Takavic, had a suspicious encounter with a taxi driver who happened to have an Albuquerque air freshener hanging from his window. From the aftermath of that run-in, Gene is convinced he's been made, especially after the taxi driver was still parked after he had dropped lunch. The taxi driver catches up with Gene again at the mall, with a menacing edge. The man asks Gene to relay his old catchphrase, better call Saul, and after much prodding, Gene reluctantly obliges. It's an incredibly tense scene. Him off. He rummages through his things, collecting some diamonds and personal items, then changes his car plates reading Missouri. My guess is that he is off to Missouri to lay low for a while. He has been busy listening to the police radio channels for any opinion on him. Meanwhile, he doesn't stop driving until it's time to break for breakfast at a certain grandma's diner in the middle of nowhere. He seems to have ordered breakfast, but seems like he is too worried to eat his breakfast or notice that it was already past noon. The moment of calm allows Gene to maybe come to his senses, and after checking to see if this coast is clear at his work, he makes his way back to Omaha but remains vigilant, especially on the police radio call. He even glances out of his window just to be sure everything is cool, just as the coast looks to be all clear at work, while out for lean. And Gene immediately calls the identity fixer to request a new identity. However, at some point during the call, Gene's brow furrows, his lip stiffens, and he decides to call the relocation, and he honestly declares he'll handle things himself.